Let's speak to Sergiy Petukhov, former Deputy Minister of Justice of Ukraine. Sergiy, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Bill.
Nice to have you with us. It was a very severe warning from Bill Browder that we just heard there. His assessment on what could happen with Mr. Trump in the White House. Before we get to that, what is your reading of Mr. Biden's latest move in allowing longer-range weapons to be used inside Russian territory?
Well, this is a response to the North Korean troops that are currently fighting in the Russian ranks in Europe, which is something that has not happened in Europe since, I don't know, we've never seen that, those troops coming all over from North Korea to Europe. This is a game changer. This is a significant force that has not been there before, and that, of course, required some sort of response. Unfortunately, the West only reacts to what Putin does and acts slower than expected and later than necessary. And I think while this is a good response, something that has been argued by Ukrainian authorities and presidents since at least a year, it's not adequate to the threats that are coming from Russia combined forces with Iran, and North Korea.
I thought one of the interesting things that Bill Browder said was that Putin makes a lot of noise regardless of what. If somebody drops a paperclip, he says, you're escalating the war. He talks about it, taking it to a different level, etc. And nothing much changes. So there's a lot of hot air coming out of Red Square, I think we can safely say. Nonetheless, this war at the moment shows no sign of ending.
Well, truly, I agree that Putin has been trying to scare the West with all of those red lines, and this has been tanks, aircrafts, direct NATO involvement or whatever. But reality is that he's bluffing and has nothing, in his hand to counter that. He's counting on the resources that he has. They're definitely bigger than Ukrainian resources, but they're not endless. And the Russian budget is hardly able to continue to wage this war for much longer. The problem is that Putin is always making the first step and the West is reacting. If the West were quicker with providing the weapons to Ukraine and enforcing the sanctions the way it's supposed to be, the Putin would have run out of money by now. And that would be much harder for him to wage this war. War is an expensive thing to do. And I think that while there is certainly nothing that Putin can bring on the table, nothing new really, except for maybe the North Korean troops, he still has the ability to scrap the resources by making Russians poor, by saving on things like hospitals and schools, which he does now in Russia, but still fueling missiles that fly and destroy Ukrainian homes and houses and kill civilians. So I think that is the point where we have to think strategically and make the first moves so that the Putin has to react on what the West has to offer. And unfortunately, up until now, it's the West that is reacting to what the Putin does.
Does the incoming president, Mr. Trump, being in the White House, increase the chance of peace and a solution, or does it decrease that chance?
It's very hard to tell. There's definitely no panic in Ukraine. I mean, we have to wage this war no matter what. It's the question of survival for Ukrainians. Trump has already served as the US president and nothing tragic happened. There's, of course, a degree of unpredictability in what he does. And I think we've seen that we have to distinguish what he says during the campaign and what actually happens in his tenure. I think Ukrainian authorities are now trying to find a way to convince him that it's in his interest to support Ukraine further. I think it's a fundamental interest of United States to support Ukraine in peace in Europe. During his administration, there was this famous declaration stating that Crimea will always be recognized as part of Ukraine. So I think that while Trump will definitely have a different view on this, it's not always positive for Ukraine. It might require some painful compromises, but I think given that Ukraine and peace in Europe is in fundamental interest of the United States, I think that the solutions will have to take this into account and bring a lasting peace rather than an armistice that will give extra couple of years for Putin to, collect more troops, find more money, and, go further.
Do you sense that compromise is the only way here? Would that be on both sides? I mean, obviously, you're a proud Ukrainian. You've served in high office. It's natural that you would want this to end one way. But will it mean that Ukraine, despite Ukraine being the place that was invaded, will also have to make concessions here?
Well, I have to say that you can sense that the people are more open to certain compromises than before. This war has really drained the resources of the country, and many people already fell victim to it. I don't think that Ukraine is ready to compromise on the territory, at least de jure, recognizing the transfer of certain territories to Russia. But other things are on the table. I think the biggest problem here is that how you enforce it. Will any agreement or compromise that you enter be enforced and guaranteed by someone in a way that it not be breached? So I think it's not really what is going to be compromised about, but rather the feeling that there's nothing really to guarantee this agreement unless Ukraine is either part of NATO or you have NATO peacekeepers on whatever administrative line is agreed. Without such guarantees, without something to this extent, it's very hard to guarantee any compromise. And without those guarantees, any compromise would mean that Putin just has more time to launch another attack.
Indeed. Sergiy, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Sergiy Petukhov, former Deputy Minister of Justice of Ukraine. Thank you to him. We're going to watch and wait on the Trump arrival in the Oval Office. I think the one thing that is probably true, as Bill Browder said, that if Trump just kind of cancels all assistance and aid to Ukraine, I don't think he will, by the way, but that is certainly speculation that he will go in that direction, then we are in for an obvious and overt and disturbing game-changing moment in that region. We will watch with interest.